It's a quarter before 8 o'clock, and it's Indiana in the Morning, presented by First Commonwealth Bank. It's WCCS AM 1160 and FM 101.1. I've actually been trying to get this topic on the air here the last couple of years, and we finally got it done. Doug Steve, Pat Snyder, Frank Garritano, all in the studio with us this morning, talking about high school sports officiating, not whether it's good or whether it's bad, but whether it's actually happening. Doug, it's kind of hard to find officials these days. Good morning.
Good morning, Todd. And yeah, Jack just left here complaining about the officials from IUP's football game on Saturday. But no, I mean, there is a shortage across the state, PIAA, and they have done some things to try to encourage more individuals to take the test. Anyone can go to the PIAA website, which is www.piaa.org. You must be 18 years of age or a high school graduate. But what they've done now, just in the last 6 months, you can take the test online. So you can register online. It used to be there were 3 times, 4 times around the year that you'd have to go to a school to take a test. Now it's all done online.
Yeah.
You have a $30 registration fee, and that pays for your first year dues. And you get a rule book, and you have a year to take the test. You have to get 75%. If you don't get 75%, they allow you to have one retest within that year period in that sport before you have to pay the $30 again.
And then once that certification comes, then you get affiliated with a chapter?
Yeah, once you pass the test, you have 15 days to get affiliated with a chapter, local chapter. And I know Indiana has, most of the sports have chapters, and Frank will go into that here in a few minutes for the sports, but it is a shortage. And when I do basketball games in the winter months, if I know someone's a senior during the dead balls, we're waiting for the media timeouts that you guys need to use to make your money here, Todd. But, if they're a senior, I may say, hey, you need to take your test after the season.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to college at IUP and in any sport, they can make some good spending money even just doing junior high games, doing elementary games in various sports, peewee football and everything. So
you end up doing sports 5 or 6 days a week if you want.
We have officials right now in the sports that do games 5-6 days a week if they want to. So.
Yeah, and it would seem that the colleges, and Frank, you can weigh in on this, the colleges would be a really good fertile field from which to harvest some officials and referees.
Yes, Todd, it is. In fact, what we try to do in the various sports, especially basketball and football, try to see if there's IUP students who are interested, and if there are, we have our rules interpreters from our chapters do a 3-evening event with them, after which time they can take their test. And we've known no one who has failed the test yet. And then we get those college students into the sport and continue to become involved in that sport, maybe something they participated in high school. May not have been a starter, may not have been playing a lot, but I found out over the years you don't have to be the star of the sport. You don't have to be the starter to be a good official. You got to be certain that you pay attention to detail and willing to learn and grow all the time.
Yeah, know the game and love the game. That ought to be the best 2 qualifications right there.
Absolutely. I think the bottom line at the end of the day, I think we all do it at the high school level because we certainly don't get rich over it, is for the love of the game, for the kids, and to try to promote sportsmanship along the way.
You've been an official for how many years? Right?
This is my 38th year as an official.
And you're doing football now.
Yes.
We'll see you on the basketball court.
Correct.
Yeah, you putting on the mask and doing some baseball or softball?
No, I do track and field in the spring.
Yeah, that's somebody who loves it. Doug, how long have you been officiating?
30 years. I took my test when I was a senior in high school, so it's I have the 30 years in now through the state for basketball. And when I took the test, I passed baseball and softball, but that was one thing as you get to college, you have to buy all that equipment. Basketball, there wasn't as much equipment, just a shirt and pair of pants and shoes to buy and a whistle.
Yeah.
But, with baseball and softball, you have more equipment, so I just concentrated on basketball over the last 30 years.
Let's bring Pat Snyder into the conversation, former athletic director at Indiana High School. Pat, you know that pressure that schools are all under to find enough officials to do games.
Yeah, good morning. First of all, I find, my 22 years in AD, I found officials to be hardworking people. I find them to be honest, engaging. I enjoy meeting them before games, walking them. I spend time with them after the games. Officials constantly, they talk afterwards. They talk as a group, see what they did well, what they what about this call? What about that call? So they want to do a great job. They do great jobs. We can't run sports without them. So I find them to be worthy, hardworking, honest people. I have great respect for what the officials do.
Yeah. When you get into the process of trying to get game officials for multiple sports all at one time, I know the pool is getting smaller and smaller. And with junior high basketball now being a winter sport, and there's a little bit more pressure from that.
Well,
how do you work it?
Some sports you get what's called an assigner. Like we call someone up, and then that person gets us. Those are easy if you got assigners. You just call up the chapter, and you send them the games, and you get your officials. But there's some sports that are not that way. It takes us probably 6 months to fill out our soccer officials. I mean, we were so desperate last year that I got emails of like 60 soccer officials within 50, 60 miles from here, sent out a mass email begging for soccer officials and trying to get a little diversity in our soccer officials. Wrestling, I got to find my own wrestling officials. Volleyball, I got to find my own volleyball officials. And track and fields, cross country, those are all officials that I don't have the luxury of a signer. So we have to get on the phone or email people and see if they'll come to Indiana. And we're in Indiana. We're out here in the boondocks. We don't live in Monroeville and Gateway and all those places have all those ADs. I always laugh at them and they are maybe envious of them because they always had the signers for everything and they didn't have to get on the phone and get people to come do their games. So there is big. Last year, baseball, we had to cancel 4 games because we didn't have officials.
Wow.
Or we had to move the game away because we didn't have officials. We had junior high volleyball, 9th grade volleyball last year. We had issues. We had to move games home to away games to keep them going. So, yes, we are seeing a critical shortage here in Indiana.
Doug and Frank, you both have experience as on-court and on-field officials. And there is the typical concern that is voiced by many when you ask them if they'd ever consider being an official. I'm already an official. I sit in the stands and I officiate. People can be very critical of officials, and it can be very hurtful. It's a very high-stress thing.
It is at times, and I know what's better, at least from the basketball standpoint, and I like when the gyms are crowded because you know what? As an official, you just hear noise. And people... after a game, people say, "Oh, did you hear that person?" You know what? You really don't. If you're concentrating on the game, the only time you may hear something is during a timeout or a dead ball. But on the course of the game, you're so focused on doing your job, officiating the game on the court, that a lot of times it's just background noise that you hear.
Yeah, and Frank, you know as well that it's not that you have to have a thick skin. It's that you have to be willing to put aside all of the criticism that folks are subject to and really focus on the job at hand.
Absolutely. Coaching is very intense, emotional activity involvement. And a lot of coaches sometimes get so wrapped up in the game, they don't remember what they're saying or what they're doing. And sometimes I call it the Jekyll and Hyde effect, before and after the game, nice and calm, and you can talk to them about fishing and hunting or other activities, but during the game, they're a whole different person. And we as officials have to keep that in mind, and I believe that by and large we do. However, unfortunately, when coaches cross that line, we have to follow the rules, and there are certain penalties and fouls that we need to call, which need to be done because it's important that the adults, whether they're coaches, whether they're officials, or whether they're fans in the stands, try to be good examples for the boys and girls who are on the court or on the field.
To be adults. You and Doug have been on the field for all of these years and on the court. Obviously, you have a love for it. What motivates you to keep going?
Well, I think there's really 4 things that keep me motivated. One is involvement. After my playing days and coaching days were over, I wanted to stay involved with the sport. And what's a very good way to do that was to officiate. You stay close to it. We have to remember that this is an avocation. Our vocation is what we do from 8 to 4. This is an avocation, something that we love to do, and it's a hobby. Another thing is collegiality. Regardless of what job you're in, you have a small circle of friends and a larger circle of acquaintances. By officiating, I have been able to grow my circle of friends, my circle of acquaintances. As a former school administrator, there's a small group of people that you could call for advice or thoughts. As you officiate, the more people you get to know, there's more people that you can call and bounce things off of about a given play. And because at the end of the day, we all as officials want to get the call right. Mm-hmm. So if we kick a call or kick a roll, we have a chance to talk about that with other officials to try to get it right. So that helps. And as I said earlier, the bottom line is for the love of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And Doug, I think sometimes this is a male-centric thing, and we need to be sure that we understand that there are openings for female officials, and not just in girls' sports anymore either.
No, that's exactly right. And just here a few years ago, Purchase Line in a boys' basketball game there, I believe they were the first school in the state.
They had three female
officials, and those 3 female officials did a great job. They do playoff games, state playoff games, and really, in reality, if you're a female and coming, at least I think in basketball, you're coming out, you're in college, I mean, you rise to the top a lot quicker than a male coming out because they need the need for female officials. Yeah. And I even know here in Indiana County this year, Chuck Lasser and Jim Ricchini help out with the signing for basketball. As of like now through elementary tournaments and the Optimist underclassmen tournament, we will have over 500 assignments of games, and that's junior high, elementary, JV, and varsity games. So, I mean, we have about 40 officials right now, and Frank can briefly go over some officials and numbers in other chapters, but you can see there's a lot of games, and some officials do ref 3, 4, 5 times a week.
Yeah, Frank.
Number-wise, for example, in the Indiana Tri-County football chapter is 27 officials, but you have 6 officials per game, so that only leaves us with 4 crews per night to work. In volleyball, there's only 11 Indiana chapter officials, primarily centered in Indiana. Soccer, there's a South Central Penn chapter, which is around Latrobe, Greensburg, and Pittsburgh. There's only 1 official from Indiana County. The other 33 are far away. Swimming and diving, that includes from Altoona to Evansburg, and there are, through Indiana County, 11 officials. Wrestling in Indiana County, we do not have a chapter. It's called the Cambria-Somerset chapter. There's 20 officials there, only 4 from Indiana County. As Doug alluded to earlier in baseball, there's a low number, only 13. In softball, there's 18 officials, and 4 of those officials also do baseball. So there's an overlap there. And our track and field chapter has 18, and as Doug said earlier, basketball has 44. So depending on the sport and depending on the number of people you need per contest, we're short in all areas.
Yeah, we have to wrap up the conversation. One of the great things I saw last year was when Greg Cepas officiated a basketball game with his daughter coming onto the ranks, and that's just a wonderful thing. So people want to know more about this topic, Doug. Who can they call? Who can they talk about and find out? Because, you know, there's the application process and all of that, but they might just be curious and say, what's it like? What's the best way for me to go?
They can talk. I mean, give Frank a call, give myself, you know, even if they're at an event, I guarantee the officials at that event will, if they have a question about how to become official or how tough is it, they'll answer the question for them. But around here, I mean, depending on the sport, there's different people. But you can even contact the athletic directors of the schools, and they can get the names of the people to talk to as well.
Just walk up to somebody wearing a vertical striped shirt, and you're good. Gentlemen, thank you all for coming in this morning. I hope we get a couple of more people onto the courts and onto the fields this year because of it.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you, Todd.
It's Indiana in the Morning, presented by First Commonwealth Bank.